Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over 3 snowstorms which are going to be impacting everywhere from the Rockies through the northern plains and even one snowstorm for parts of the northeast. We're going to be discussing all 3 of those snowstorms in today's video. We're going to have a lot of information to get through, so hopefully you guys do like the video and subscribe. That's how it gets out to more people, and that's how our channel can actually grow. So if you do that, I really do appreciate you, and I really do thank you for doing so. So let's get right into it here, and let's start off with your current National Weather Service page. You can see that we have some high wind watches in effect for one county in Southern California, and then more wind advisories up for the northern plains. We have some winter storm watches in effect for southern Wyoming, as well as some winter weather advisories in northeastern Montana, and some red flag warnings in southern Colorado. But other than that, the entire most of the United States, basically from the Rockies eastward, is fairly dry and fairly quiet right now. Mainly just rain showers over some parts of the eastern United States, but in terms of significant weather, we really don't have too much going on. Yesterday, your high temperature was in Death Valley, California for the second day in a row. They got to 101 degrees Fahrenheit. The low temperature was 9 miles southwest of Big Sky, Montana. They got to 1 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest precipitation or rainfall report was in Hillsdale, Illinois. They got 3.21 inches of rain. And the highest snowfall report was 1 mile south of Red Lodge, Montana, where they got 4.6 inches of reported snowfall there. So here's what the current radar looks like, and we're going to start discussing our first storm, which is actually right now going on. But this is going to be going on for another 48 to maybe even upwards of 60 hours, because this is going to be a very long duration event. We currently have some fairly consistent light to moderate snowfall, especially over southern Canada, and now starting to break out over parts of North Dakota and Minnesota. Still too warm for snow, however, as you get further to the south into parts of southern North Dakota, eastern and central parts of Minnesota as well. Some bigger cities like Winnipeg, Regina, and also some more of these areas along southern Canada getting impacted with some heavy snowfall at times. We've already seen reports ranging from about 1 to 3 inches of snowfall in some of these areas, and it's going to continue to come down at least for another 24 hours in these areas. This storm is nowhere near done. It's actually just getting started for most of these areas, and now we're going to start to see more of those bigger cities in the United States like Grand Forks, Bismarck, and then even into areas like Duluth, potentially getting in on some of that snowfall later on tonight and into tomorrow. Here's what the NAM model is showing for the total snowfall out of this event, and this is added on to what you've already seen. You can see 2 to 6 inches or more in the blues, and then 6+ inches in the pinks. So you can see, or in the purple actually. So in the purple, you can see, which covers much of northwest Minnesota and northern North Dakota, 6+ inches. You also get down into areas like southern Manitoba, southern Saskatchewan. Those areas are also going to be dealing with some fairly robust snowfall for this time of year. And then again, a mainly 2+ inch event if you live north of this black line that I just drew in on your screen. Let's talk about your next storm, and this is going to be happening in parts of the northeast. And this is going to be more of a complex type of system, because we're not dealing with a natural source of cold air, and we're going to talk about this in just a little bit. But your cold air is actually coming up from way higher up in the atmosphere, and like many April snowstorms, it's coming down and then filtering down with the extremely heavy precipitation, and that's how you're actually getting the cold air when you have a big thunderstorm, for example. You're having very intense rainfall that's mixing in some of those winds from aloft, which are much stronger, and mixing them down to the surface. That's the same exact thing that's going to happen right here, but not in thunderstorm format. Instead, in a kind of a big area of heavy rain / snow. So what you're dealing with is a column of very heavy precipitation that's cooling down the entire atmosphere, because it's bringing down so much rainfall all at once that even some of that cold air is getting dragged into the surface. You might have surface temperatures at 34 to 35, but you have upper air temperatures just a couple thousand feet up that are well below zero. So that's going to be helping with that snowfall. So this is going to be by Thursday in the morning hours. We have mostly rain, maybe a little bit of mixing starting to break out, but really nothing to worry about by Thursday morning. You might be able to go through the entire day on Thursday, the morning and afternoon commute without any issues. The only issues will be heavy rainfall at times, especially centered over areas like New Jersey, Delaware, and eastern Pennsylvania. And believe it or not, this is going to be one of those same areas that gets in to the snowfall, and that's going to be the first areas to really break out in snow. So you can see over parts of the Poconos and the Catskills, as well as parts of northwest New Jersey, those areas are breaking into a bit of a mix. Probably not any ice with this. I really don't think there will be any ice because we have warmer temperatures on the surface and colder air aloft. Usually when you have ice, it's actually the opposite. So we're most likely going to be dealing with either a mix of rain and snow or full-on snow. By the way, look at this. We have snowfall rates which are going to be approaching maybe up to 3 or 4 inches per hour on this model right here. That very dark blue is showing that you're seeing maybe up to 3/4 of an inch of liquid precipitation per hour. Using a 10-to-1 ratio, that'll be about 7.5 inches per hour, but we know it's so much warmer, so your snow ratio is actually going to be closer to 5-to-1, which means that you'll likely have maybe 3 or 4 inches per hour if you were to do all the math there. So not the insane rates that you would see with a much fluffier snow, but still very, very heavy snowfall over some of these areas. And just to kind of show you what I was talking about, here are the surface temperatures at that exact moment, and you can see that we have surface temperatures which are, if this were just to be a regular storm, too warm to actually see any snowfall. You're seeing temperatures that are 34, 33, 35 degrees. You might be able to see a little bit of snow mix in, but look aloft. These are the temperatures that are just about 10 to 12,000 feet up, and you're dealing with temperatures in Celsius that are -25 to -30 degrees Celsius. So very, very cold air in these areas, and that's going to be mixing into the lower parts of the atmosphere, and that's what was going to really allow some of that cold air and snow to start to break out. So this would be by Friday early in the morning, and we're dealing with more of that snow breaking out over parts of northern Pennsylvania, southern New York, even up through parts of the southern Adirondacks, and then also into the southern Green Mountains in parts of Vermont, maybe even a little bit into parts of Massachusetts and Connecticut. And then continuing this forward, here would be by Friday morning, you're dealing with more of that snow breaking out over parts of upstate New York, Pennsylvania, Vermont, Massachusetts, even a little bit of New Hampshire as well. And even look down here in the Smoky Mountains in West Virginia, we're dealing with a little bit of snow through there. I think you're probably going to need to get above 1,500 foot elevations to actually get into some of that snowfall. So it's not going to be the areas that are at maybe 500 to 1,000 foot elevation in some of these areas in the Northeast. You're really going to have to be a little bit harder than that. And also, if you can get maybe 100 miles, 50 to 100 miles away from the coast, that's where you're going to be in the ideal spot to get away from all that warm air and eventually transition over to snowfall. And the main reason that is because we have your low pressure, which is right here by this point. It's bringing in a warm onshore flow. Well, typically it'll be a cooler flow, but in this case, it'll be considered warm because the ocean waters are actually in the 40s and 50s. So fairly warm enough, definitely, that it could not support snow. So these areas in eastern New England, you're going to see actually a lot more snow back through upstate New York than you will see in Maine, where if you were in a typical winter pattern, you would be dealing with a lot more snow in Maine and New Hampshire than you would be in seeing an upstate New York and Pennsylvania. So a very interesting setup right here. This would be by Friday in the early afternoon. This is where I'm a little bit more skeptical on whether we're going to see this because, for example, the European model is showing maybe upwards of 6 inches of snowfall in Providence, Rhode Island. Really, I don't think that's going to be too likely here, but it's definitely a possibility because it's showing the same dynamic cooling which was happening in the Poconos, happening now in some of the higher elevations of Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. And it's also showing those snow rates of about 3 or 4 inches per hour. So really heavy snowfall rates if this were to happen because you're dealing with heavy banding of precipitation overlaid with cold air, and that's how you get heavy snow rates. And then that system is going to continue to pull away to the north. Here's where your low pressure is by this point. So this is your low pressure. You have some of that snow back up to the north in parts of southern New England. And then if we just continue this on a little bit more, it starts to head into Maine. You might start off as a bit of a rain-snow mix in coastal coastal Maine, but then transitioning to pretty much all rain as we get through the day on Saturday. So here's what the European model is showing for the total snowfall, and this is higher than what the GFS is showing, which I'll show you in just a minute. Anywhere in the blues, 2 to 6 inches, 6 to 10 inches in the purples, 10 plus inches in the pinks. So you can see many of these areas through the areas in southern New England and then back through the interior Northeast are dealing with some amount of snowfall. And then especially elevated areas, so the Catskills and Poconos, as well as parts of the Green and White Mountains, are mainly just the Green Mountains, are dealing with some heavy snowfall, upwards of 6 inches or more in these areas. So that could be potentially something that you want to prepare for if this is to plan out. But notice the timestamp on the top part of your screen, 138 hours out. We still do have a lot of time for this to change. I don't think it'll change I don't think we're going to see that this is going to completely go away in the models, because it's been in the models for over 2 days now, with no indication of going away. But I do think that you're going to see some sort of change. Some models are already shifting this further to the north. Some are actually bringing this further to the south. So we still have a ton of time for this to change. Here's the GFS, and you can see this is one of the northern type of tracks with the models, and you can see it's much more shifted to the east. So the Poconos now dealing with maybe a coating to an inch, whereas on the other model, the European model, they were dealing with upwards of 10 inches. And then you look through parts of New England and eastern New York, and you're dealing with amounts that are closer to 2 to 6 inches of snowfall. Here's what the GFS model is showing for our next storm, and this is actually the last storm we're going to be talking about in today's video. You can see that low pressure in parts of Utah right there. And then we're dealing with snow back through into parts of the Rockies, especially on the central and northern parts of the Rockies. Then as we continue this forward, you're going to see that low pressure transfer over into New Mexico, and it's eventually going to head out further to the east. But if you live in the Great Plains, especially in western Nebraska through parts of Wyoming, eastern Colorado, and then back through western Kansas, that zone right there is where you really want to pay attention, because there's a lot of discrepancy within the models, and depending on exactly who gets hit, we could be dealing with isolated areas getting 6 or more inches of snowfall. So 3 6 or more inch snowfall events within the time frame of 5 days. Quite crazy for mid-April right here, and it's really switched up very quickly, where we went from a warm pattern to a cold pattern very, very quick. This is by Thursday late at night, and we're dealing with snow starting to break out light to moderate in parts of South Dakota, Nebraska, Colorado, and Wyoming. So fairly decent event right now, considering that it is mid-April, and typically we don't see too many of these types of events. But then we start to see strengthening on the GFS model. The European model does the strengthening up through Nebraska, so it shows 6+ inches right through southwest Nebraska. But what the GFS does is that it has a little bit more cold air suppressed into the Rockies, and what actually happens is that the dynamic cooling ends up taking place over Kansas and eastern Colorado, and that's where the bullseye ends up being. So you can see how some really big cities like Denver, for example, are going to be really impacted with the outcome of where that band of snowfall actually does end up setting up. And then continuing this forward, you can see that band continues to head further to the south. Pretty much the entire eastern half of Colorado by this point is covered in snowfall. So is the western half of Kansas. This is by Friday morning. Here's by Friday in the late morning, and we're still dealing with snowfall back through parts of Kansas into Oklahoma, Texas, especially northwest Texas, and then back through eastern Colorado, southwest Nebraska, still holding on to a couple of snow showers, and then it starts to fizzle out by late on Friday, and then it's out of here by Saturday morning. So it's mainly a Thursday to about Friday type of event, a 2-day event for many of these areas. Here's what the GFS is showing for the snowfall. So you can see that in parts of western Nebraska, back through southeastern Wyoming, Colorado, and western Kansas, we're dealing with heavy snowfall, but especially right through this area right here. So for areas west of Denver, are dealing with potentially upwards of 30 inches in the mountains, 10+ inches in Denver itself, and then you go back through eastern Colorado. So areas like Loveland, Colorado, could be dealing with 6 to 10 inches of snowfall if the GFS were to pan out, but the problem is that we don't have too much of of agreement on the models. Here's what the European model shows, and you can see quite different. So in this scenario, areas in western Kansas, southeastern Colorado completely left out of the snowfall, and now it's up to areas like southwestern Nebraska, northern Colorado, southeastern Wyoming, with all of that heavy snowfall. So we're dealing with potentially 6 to 10 inches or more. You get into parts of southeastern Wyoming and northern and central Colorado, we could be dealing with upwards of 18 or more inches of snowfall. So really a crazy type of pattern where we have 3 different 6+ inch potentially snowstorms, in one in the Rockies and the Central Plains, another one in the Northern Plains, and one in the Northeast as well. So really a very hectic type of pattern. I will be covering all of these storms over the next couple of days, and I hope you guys did enjoy this type of video. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.